Good morning and welcome to Friday's OTBAM. Adrian with you as ever on a Friday morning. You're very welcome along. And Owen Shane alongside me. Good morning, Owen.
Morning, Adrian.
We were just commenting on the last couple of Fridays. I've had some pretty exciting taxi experiences, but not the case this morning. It was just a pretty good taxi ride into work.
Did you have the radio on with relaxing music again?
No, I had News Talk on.
Okay.
Yeah. But I did have my headphones on. I was listening to TalkSport, I have to admit, on the way in. You know, I have a penchant for TalkSport.
Yeah, doesn't everybody really? Listening to Ray Parlour and Alan Brazil going through the stock markets is my highlight in TalkSport in the morning.
Ali McCoist was in the sidekick chair this morning, so it was Scottish voice overload.
Right, okay. What was he predicting?
They were talking about George Burley, actually, as it turns out, so it was... Yeah, I mean, they were broadcasting only clearly to people in Scotland. We have a busy show coming up over the next while, and we can tell you about all that in a second. But one thing that certainly struck me, was that it was actually over the course of reading some Jose Mourinho quotes that it's been a big week for Jose and for Martin O'Neill, because both of them have put pen to paper on a new contract.
Yes.
And it also struck me that actually both of them to give similar-ish type of interviews and similar-ish type of quotes from time to time. And I kind of thought that I was going to flip things this morning on the crappy Quizmaster and put a couple of quotes with him and see, was it moo or mon?
Okay.
Mon or moo?
Yep. Okay.
We give this a bash?
This is very exciting
I
altogether.
appreciate I'm sort of landing this on you now at the minute. And, feel free to get involved as well if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff this morning. So, right, I'm just going to throw these quotes at you. You let me know if it's moo or mon, right? So first up, you also have to check my record. I don't just disappear after a week. Managers come and go in 6 or 7 weeks. My record speaks for itself.
It's like knowing the opening jingle to Sweet Child of Mine. That's mon right there. I know
straight away. It could have been either or though, right? I mean, I got off with an easy one because he said it this week. Disaster is around the corner. It is. It's lurking. It's incredibly negative. Am I thinking about the bad times ahead? No. I've got to remain positive. I'm going to fight this negativity.
It's schizophrenic. That's Jose Mourinho right there.
That is a Martin O'Neill right there, yeah.
But that must have been in the press section the other day. That's it's kind of to and fro a little bit, like Jose tends to do, the positive and the negative.
Well, exactly. Very emotive. That was kind of what I tried. The actual quote was Jesus no, but I thought if I put that in, he's definitely going to know it's Martin O'Neill, so left that out. Right, we'll go on another one here. When you see a tree with amazing oranges in the top of the tree and then you cannot get there, you say, oh, I'll get the lower ones because I don't like the ones at the top. But you do like the ones at the top. They're so nice, so orange, so round, so full of juice, but you cannot get there. So you say, I don't want to go there. Or I didn't like those, I prefer the other ones. Yeah,
it's the latest classic. It's a postmodern classic from Jose Mourinho right there.
It was so good. I mean, it was this
I just let you finish. I knew straight away.
I thought you were going to get it, but it was so good I had to include it. Please don't call me arrogant because when what I say is true, I'm a European champion.
Ooh, it's got to be Mourinho, doesn't it?
Ah, well done, Owen, well done. That was the precursor to the special one quote. I'm not one of the bottle, I am the special one.
Was it? Yeah, that was a precursor.
People just forget about it,
Yeah, a tricky one.
I think Ashley Young is world class. I'd put him in a bracket with Lionel Messi and Ronaldo.
Well, this is almost too straightforward. That is Jose Mourinho,
That is Martin O'Neill right there.
Is it?
Yeah.
When he was Villa manager.
I mean, you're really struggling here, Owen. Look, I'm a coach. I'm not Harry Potter. He is magical, but in reality, there is no magic. Magic is fiction, and football is reality.
You see, you've got the pragmatism of Jose Mourinho there, but the lack of belief in magic would suggest it's not Jose Mourinho, but I'll go with the pragmatism element and say that's Jose Mourinho.
Correct, Owen. Well done. You went with your instinct and that was the right thing to do. There's more of an existential conversation that comes out of that, of whether,
magic is real or not.
Magic is fiction and football is reality.
Yeah, well, if you're 10 years old and you've just read Harry Potter and you're waiting for your 11th birthday for the letter from Hogwarts, but Jose Mourinho's an adult, so no.
One final one. We don't have A, B, C, D, E, F and G, but we do have L, M, N, S, O, P, O and P.
What the hell? I've never heard that one before. That's what are you thinking? You've stumped me there. It's such a strange quote. It could be. I'm going to say Martin O'Neill.
That is Jose Mourinho.
When did he say that?
I don't know. I put it in because it feels like a very Martin O'Neill thing to say. We don't have these quality players, but we have this next quality.
Yeah.
But no, it's Jose Mourinho. I've absolutely no idea. My research didn't quite allow me to get that far. I stuck it together there about 5 minutes before we came to air.
Did you read that on Wikipedia?
No, I googled Jose Mourinho. Actually, what I did was to try and properly trick you. I googled Jose Mourinho international football quotes.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't find that many, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, because Martin O'Neill has never managed a club.
That would have been it would have been too obvious, right?
Yeah, sure,
The
fair.
obvious thing to do. Right, packed show coming up for you between now and 9 o'clock, or probably just about thereafter. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's on the menu. Going to get stuck into the newspapers in just a couple of minutes, let you know what's going on there. A couple of interesting stories to tell you about. We're going to speak to, if you've watched the Netflix movie / documentary Icarus and follow the fallout from that, you'll be aware of the name Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, and the lawyer of Dr. Rodchenkov, Jim Walden, took a call from myself and Owen yesterday, so we're going to bring you a flavour of that, the full piece of which will be available on offtheball.com thereafter, so we'll give you a flavour of that a little bit later in the day. We're going to speak to Kevin Kilban. It says Kevin's hot takes. We shall see about that. We had a dip into his fridge last week. He is at home in Manchester. We're certainly hoping that's the case, and we're going to speak to him before 9. We might have another look in that fridge and see what's going on. We're going to speak to Michael Quirke as well to preview the weekend's start to the Alliance National Football League, and to keep the Kerry theme going, apart from Mike and from Owen here as well. Owen's been speaking to the Kerry captain, Aislinn Desmond, as well, so we'll get her thoughts. And it's the cup final weekend in the basketball, so we're going to, Oisín's been out and about to speak to Puff Summers, so we're going to have much more of that to come as well over the next little bit. And on that note, we do have a great competition for you this morning as well, so get in touch with us. We've got 2 tickets to give away on the show this morning to the sold out Men's National Cup final on Saturday night. It's the Pat Duffy National Cup final. It's UCD Marion up against Black Amber of Temple Oaks at the National Basketball Arena. It's tomorrow night. It's from 8 o'clock. And we want you to get involved in the shows. Drop us in a comment. I think that's what we're going to do, Tommy. Best comment between now and 9 o'clock. And the best comment is going to win those tickets. So if it's a good one and you can get yourself along to the National Basketball Arena tomorrow night and take in that sold out game, get in contact, and the tickets may well be winging their way to you. What's happening in the world of sport this morning is that Tiger's back, of course. He's playing in the Farmers Insurance in San Diego. He shot a level par yesterday round, as did Padraig Harrington. But Shane Lowry is a little bit further up the leaderboard there in San Diego. He's 3 under par and 4 shots back from the leader there, Tony Finau. Also in the golf over in the European Tour, it's the Dubai Desert Classic. Rory McIlroy will be out a bit later today. He's on 7 under par after a pretty strong round beginning to his tournament yesterday. Jamie Donaldson of Wales leads the way on 10 under par. The Roger Federer, in just over half an hour's time, he'll be in semi-final action at the Australian Open. He's up against Hyung Chung from Korea, with Marin Cilic awaiting the winner there. And as we said, the Alliance National Leagues kick off tomorrow. More on that and on, but for the minute it's over to Owen, who's going to kick us off with the Friday morning's back pages. Yeah, it's a story that's been blown up this morning around Alexis Sanchez. Doping storm reads the back of the Irish Daily Mail. New United star Sanchez missed a test. That's Matt Lawton and Sammy Mockbill's story there. And Lawton, of course, well accustomed to doping stories at this stage. He's got the details there to say that essentially the striker missed a random test. It was a whereabouts issue on the very day he completed his move from Arsenal to Manchester United. So there's a forgivable nature to it in terms of any punishment that might happen here. Lawton says that it's usually a second or a third offence that will require a punishment at that point, but we don't know if Sanchez has ever failed in terms of a whereabouts level before. So is this the first time for Sanchez? We don't know. If it's not the first time, he's in a spot of bother. For the time being, though, we have to assume that this is the first time Sanchez has ever been popped on the whereabouts rule. We can see why it's happened. We don't need to be cynical around this, I don't think. At the same time, you look at Alexis Sanchez and you see Sanchez drug shock on the back of the mirror here, and if you replace Alexis Sanchez in that car with Mo Farah, for example, I suspect we're looking at this in a very different level. When it comes to whereabouts and it comes to different sports, I guess there is a double standards. I seem to be taking this at face value a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't be. Maybe there's going to be more coming out about this story over the next couple of days. I do think we need to hear from them. I know there were clubs were contacted last night and they've said no comment, but actually the next thing is we do need to hear from them. And you're right when you say it's 3 strikes, which could result in some sort of a ban, which to me seems absolutely farcical. Yeah. We let you get away with this 3 times. If I'm doping, I just don't show up 3 times, let it get out of my system. But that's over a 12-month period. Let it get out of my system over a year, and then just turn up and take the test. Yeah, absolutely. It's on the back of the Irish Daily Star as well. Lewd dopes, reads the headline, Alexis in the dock after a missing test. Yeah, it's an interesting one. The whereabouts thing is something we often crack down on when it comes to cyclists and athletes, for sure. And with footballers,
it just seems very unlucky that a random test would happen to occur to Alexis Sanchez on the very day he's moving City. So naturally he's not going to be at Arsenal. They showed up to Arsenal to test him and he wasn't there. So it's an interesting one. At the same time, the cynic in me does think that, you know, like what's going on here, that a random tester wouldn't know that Alexis Sanchez isn't going to be there, that he's not reporting to duty, you know.
I think you're right to say that is the one little variable that would be untypical, and you have to give, I think it's an hour a day of your exact location. So normally I'm going to be at training at this time, come and check it out, and obviously things have changed slightly for him over the last couple of days, so who knows. I did read that the same 3 strikes rule also applies to clubs, and that last year Manchester City and Bournemouth both fell foul of it, and they were hit with a grand fine of £35,000.
Yeah, I remember that.
That for them is absolutely peanuts. Like I know that they were looking to try and tighten those whereabouts rules up recently enough. I think they really need a strong look at, and soon as well. Right, the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Southgate eyes Rice switch. This is not the news we really wanted to see. Promising Ireland under-21 star on the England manager's radar. This is the West Ham defender, Declan Rice, who qualifies for Ireland through the grandparent rule, but Gareth Southgate now saying that he is on their radar, that the FA Technical Director Dan Ashworth is somebody who is very much aware of Declan Rice, and I know Keith Andrews was talking about it as well on the Keith Andrews show on offtheball.com yesterday, and saying that he would have a concern that this guy's going to get tapped up because he's come through all the underage ranks from an Irish point of view. But he obviously, being born in England, very much qualifies to play for England. We'll see how that pans out over the next little bit. The Times Ireland edition as well, also leading with that same story there. England may snatch Rice from Ireland, writes John Fallon here. And as Owen said, Sanchez in mystery over doping tests as well there out on the right-hand side. On
the back of the Sun, we've got fruit punch. Jose, neighbours jealous, we pipped them to juiciest orange. Sanchez. Nice, like a hat-trick of puns in there. New deal, new dig at City reads the sub-headline there. It's Jose Mourinho as well on the front of the Herald Sports Supplement this Friday. Sanchez, tick. New deal, tick. Ronaldo, blank box, absent of tick. So will Ronaldo be heading to Manchester United? Well, we could discuss those possibilities with Kevin Kilban, who's up after 8 o'clock this morning. And then, of course, Manchester United are in FA Cup action tonight at 5 to 8. They're up against Yeovil. They're away to Yeovil. And as I say, it's a 5 to 8 kickoff. Yeovil should avoid FA Cup trashing at Hoosh Park. Is that how you pronounce it?
Hoosh Park, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Hoosh Park. So there we go. No trashing for Yeovil tonight. The Racing Post has said it, so it must be true.
The Irish Examiner here has got the Galway goalkeeper Colm Conlon splashed across the front page as we head into the opening weekends of the National League. So pretty good photograph there. And Ronald O'Gara you'll see at the top there as well, in a very Ian Poulter style, what do you call them?
A visor?
A visor, is it?
No, well, I haven't completely got that. A golf cap.
Well, yeah, it's just the one with the top cut off it.
Yeah. It's a Johan van Gran look.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I thinking? What's the word I'm thinking of? I can't remember. Visor is right. I've been told in my ear by Tommy.
They're mostly pretty ridiculous looking, it has to be said, but there's a good piece inside from Ronald O'Gara.
Who said it?
There was an earthquake in Christchurch over the weekend. Ronald O'Gara is obviously just there and had to experience that. So there's a good piece there in the Examiner about that this morning. The Irish News as well, let's take a look at that this morning. It's very much on the GAA theme as well. This in relation to Neil McManus, the Antrim captain, taken aback by the Ulster Senior Hurling Championship decision. He's had some pretty interesting things to say over the last couple of years. And Tiger as well, a good silhouette shot there of Tiger in action in the States. And finally, from me, from the back page just a minute, is the Irish Times. We go, and it's golf all the way here on the front page of the Irish Times sports section. McIlroy Rue's missed chances despite a fine 65. That same photograph of Tiger there as well. No fireworks, little rhythm, but he returns with a smile.
On the UK titles, I will start with the Daily Telegraph, and I was struggling with a hip injury, reads the headline regarding Kyle Edmund there. He got knocked out at the Australian Open in the semi-final stage by Marin Cilic there yesterday. He's also on the back of The Guardian. Just the beginning, Edmund falls but has taste for Grand Slam glory. Kyle Edmund, no longer British, he is South African again.
Damning with faint praise their own good work. Just after 8 o'clock on this Friday morning, that is the what's across the back pages this morning. A couple of stories we want to get into on the inside of this morning's newspaper as well, just to let you know what's going on there. Brian Gavin's got a very interesting interview with John Fogarty in the Irish Examiner on retirement and all that good stuff. We've mentioned Sanchez already. Belfield is going to be rebuilt, it turns out. A pretty generous donor has come to the rescue there to get the athletics track back up and running, and player development in Dublin is back on the radar as well. That Owen's going to talk to you about in just a second. But yeah, Brian Gavin, the now former inter-county referee from Offaly, is the subject of an interview by John Fogarty on page 7 of the Examiner this morning. Brian Gavin, who was only 40 actually, was one of the things that kind of stood out to me. I definitely had one of those moments where I kind of went, my God, geez, he's the same age as me. So he's retired, and he's kind of talking about all the rationale behind that. I mean, at 40 he should still theoretically have some good years left in him to give, but he talks about the impact, the toll that it takes on you physically and mentally and all that kind of stuff. He said, John Fogarty writes here, but if the truth be told, refereeing at the highest level had become a bit of a trudge. Wood Championship appointment last year was the total of his appointments. For the effort put in, it wasn't worth it. It was really, and that's kind of the tone of this thing here. Gavin himself says the last few years we had a panel of 14 referees and there were only 23 or 24 championship games. So doing the maths, some lads were only going to get one game. He said it led to a bit of unrest in the room because lads were jockeying for a game, and the championship is what it's all about. You never really get to think about it from that point of view, from the referee's point of view. And those numbers
for championship
don't stack up from my point of view. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's 14 referees at inter-county level, maximum 24 games. I would question why we need so many referees. Surely we should actually reduce down that pool, have a better quality of referee, like maybe do something mad like try and have a select pool of referees that are maybe full-time referees that are properly and fully dedicated to this thing, because the fitness thing was a huge thing that he was talking about as well, the toll that would take on his body, and obviously he's got to go about work and all that kind of good stuff.
Because they've upped that fitness
as well.
Standard now, haven't they?
Yeah, he was saying that, like things like the bleep test, he was saying it's increased by 16 runs in recent times, and he's saying that it's taken a huge toll on his hips. He gets huge pain in his hips afterwards. So it's stuff like that you can't, like as with players, you can't properly allow for proper R&R afterwards. But like from a referee's point of view, going professional should be something we should put in the agenda as something to talk about. Like if the players are putting so much effort in, and if frequently we hear the comments about, well, the referee wasn't up to standard, or the fitness wasn't right, or the decision making was off, surely that's something we could do.
Maybe. They only just started getting paid this year in the NFL, which I was quite surprised with when that story came out at the start of the year. So if the sport...
So they had, needless to say, they had jobs.
Yeah, they're like a dentist or a doctor, and they show up to Gillette Stadium on a Sunday and referee the biggest sport in America. Yeah, it is incredible. I guess there is, I'm not sure how many days a week they're actually working or whatever, and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think you do need a professional sport before you have professional officiating. Like in terms of the fitness, that's just a natural thing. I don't think, like, you do feel sorry for referees who aren't getting the big games, and that they're good enough and that there's a huge pool and they'll only get whatever 1 or 2 championship games a year, but you don't necessarily feel sorry for referees at the tail end of their career, because especially when it comes to hurling, you do need to be incredibly fit to keep up with the game.
Yeah.
And naturally, once you're tipping over the age of 40, there's many a human who isn't able to keep up with that level. I'm trying to word my words very carefully here so I don't offend you, but there is a certain tail off, like you get with athletes themselves. Yeah. So naturally that happens. But
here, go on.
The one thing I haven't read this piece yet. Does he mention the Tommy Walsh incident?
There's nothing to do with Tommy Walsh. No, there isn't. No. You're disappointed about that.
Bravely disappointed.
It's a fair enough point about putting the professional sport before the professional referees. I actually totally get that point. But the only thing about it is, I think almost in a lot of ways there's inevitability about that professional thing into the GAA. Maybe not in our lifetime, but it seems to me that ultimately it's going to happen at some point. It'd probably take quite a while. And actually the expense involved in having professional referees may not be prohibitive. Whereas for players at the minute, maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think the professionalism of referees is a long way off. I don't think it's even necessary at this point.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of inter-county players who might argue with the point. It was kind of, there's frequently something that comes that finds its way into the public domain. Players being critical of officiating at inter-county
They're critical
games
of professional referees in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Even,
no, I get that.
I
just think you'd get a better quality of referee, obviously, if they were there full time.
So what are you doing on a day-to-day basis as a professional referee?
Well, I would say in any sport, you're working on your fitness, you're sitting down and analysing previous performances,
But the level of fitness to be a referee isn't like the level of fitness it needs to be a professional athlete.
When's the last time you were at a hurling match?
Last year.
Yeah.
Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Well, you have to be incredibly fit to referee a hurling game.
Okay, I said the word incredibly fit earlier on. I think you have to be relatively fit.
I would say incredibly fit. I'd say relatively fit for football, incredibly fit for hurling.
Fair, okay, difference of opinion there. Yeah. I don't think you need it.
I just need a back zone, but that's, you know.
What's the average distance? 13 kilometres? It is a good distance. You're running 13 kilometres over whatever, a 70-minute game.
But it's not like going out for a 13-kilometre jog, because it's the stop-start nature of it and you know, the twisting and turning and stuff.
True. Yeah, I take that point, but I don't buy that you need to be a top-level athlete and like absolutely shredded to be a referee.
Oh, I'm not saying that at all. No.
I don't see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis as a professional referee. That's all I'm saying.
What I'm saying is I think you can fill your day. What else have we got? You've got...
yeah, if you pass me over the Times Ireland edition there with Declan Rice in the back, but it's not Declan Rice we're talking about. We're talking about games, promotion officers. We've been accused of anti-Dublin bias all the time in this show, but here's some pro-Dublin bias and a feel-good story about the developments of...
There's nothing that says the start of the GAA season where the Kerry juices are going than a bit of pro-Dublin propaganda from a Kerry source.
Well, it's GPOs. It's Paul Keane's story here in the Times Ireland edition. He talks about P. Moran GAA Club. Have you heard of P. Moran GAA Club?
No.
So this
P. Moran?
Yeah.
Right.
This club is sandwiched between Kilmacud Crokes and Coola down in South Dublin.
I actually live in that direction.
Well, there you go.
Oh.
Your boy could be playing for this club one day, and who knows, this could be a good advertisement for the club. So last season they competed in Division A of adult leagues, and Paul Keane does a piece here with Darren McGee. He's the former Dublin midfielder, his brother Johnny McGee. So he's the games promotion officer with P. Moran. So it's Geraldine's P. Moran, to give the club the full name. So basically he spends part of his time in a number of schools that need a club outlet. So he goes into the schools, tells them about P. Moran, and for example, the effect that this is having is that the national school, the Guardian Angel school, put in a girls team in the Dublin National Schools competition for the first time ever last year as a result of this guy going into the schools and telling them about this great new GAA club, or not new GAA club, this other option of Gaelic games that they have around the corner. So the first thing I'm thinking when I see that is, right, there is a bunch of kids there who are now playing Gaelic games who may have played nothing. They may not have been interested in whatever the other sports were around that part of South Dublin, and suddenly McGee goes in there and they're playing sports. So this is a good news story. This is good for the health of the kids of Dublin, first of all, but secondly, to give another club some upshoots in where they might go. So he talks off at starting off with 14 kids from under 8 downwards, growing up to a point that from under 11 down, they've got 35 kids per group at this point. And you start to think to yourself, Jesus, how many potential hotbeds are there around the county of Dublin that have yet to be tapped into? That we talk about the Dublin dominance in the championship, and suddenly there's this club that I've never heard of in South Dublin where Johnny McGee's brother goes in, and suddenly there's like 35 kids in every age group, and I'm like, how is there this population in this county? It's incredible. And like, if Colin O'Rourke was reading this piece, he might think to himself, this is even more of a reason to split Dublin in 2 or 4. I'm completely against that. I just think, to use the cliche, think of the children here. Think of the added opportunities that are being given here with these games promotion officers that are playing a vital role. How much money they're getting then is the next thing. So they get €2.3 million of the Leinster Council spend on GPOs, but they only get half of it from the GAA. So they actually have to go out and fundraise for the second half of their salary. If you're getting 38 grand to be a GPO, you've got to raise 19 grand of that yourself. So self-funding your salary every single year in half, it's a pretty tough ask. The next thing, and this is kind of the final point on this article, is how is this being taken by the Leinster Council for the greater good of the GAA and for the greater good of competitiveness in Leinster. And we've got this East Leinster project. It's a 3-year plan which set aside $500,000 a year to funding coaching and games development in Meath, Kildare, Wicklow and Louth. And basically it's just going to mirror what the likes of McGee and Co have been doing in Dublin in terms of games promotion officers. So the project in year 2 has been expanded to include Wexford. So we see these offshoots of just population of Gaelic football or hurling players. We're expecting to see this now in the rest of East Leinster, and it's going to be spread out from Dublin. Dublin are also funding this East Leinster project. So, you know, we're very quick to criticise the amount of funding that Dublin gets. They're actually taking some money out of their own pot, 200 grand per year from their own budget to fund this East Leinster project. So it is for the greater good here, and I think it's a very good news story for true Gaels in the capital city for sure.
I never thought I'd see the day, and I have to say on both counts there, pro Dublin and true Gaels.
My heart is feeling warm. It is January. It won't be so warm in a couple of months.
There are incredible numbers out there, anecdotally, at a club like Kilmacud Crokes as well, that the numbers are almost too much for them to manage. The Crokes facility is enormous, and they're having to use other facilities around Stillorgan to just cope with the sheer numbers of players that are coming in. So I think there's definitely room for other clubs in the area. When was it's not a new club, that Geraldine's P. Moran?
Geraldine's P. Moran. It doesn't actually say how old the club is. I've never heard of it. So
there's definitely room for other clubs around there. It's pretty phenomenal, the sheer numbers that are been filtered into a club like Kilmacud Crokes. So I'm sure that more luck to them. A couple of comments coming in here. On Patrick Conway says, "Wow, Adrian, your golf analysis has come a fair way. You should start a new slot called Barry's Tea."
Any new slot which would, like, other than a baryometer which has your name as a pun, I'm not sure if we're encouraging that sort of stuff there, but I do appreciate the pun.
Patrick's been up.
Is the baryometer happening today, by the way?
No, there's been no baryometer. I replaced it. I put the equal workload that I put into the baryometer every week into the Moo versus Mon quiz at the top of the show.
Okay, yeah. It was equally funny.
It was equal quality, I would say.
Yeah.
Robert on YouTube says, "Howdy from Saudi." It's all happening this morning to the OTBAM team watching from Riyadh. Thanks for all the shows, says Rob. Happy to be broadcasting in Saudi this morning, Rob, and a very good morning to you, or good evening, or whatever it is there. Digger, friend of the show on Twitter, responding to our own tweet about whether we expect, who we expect Declan Rice to declare for. Digger says, "England. Grealish, to me, showed if these guys think they're good enough for England, and Rice is, they'll declare for England." It's a fair point.
It's a fair point, and to be fair, like, especially with the Grealish situation, people are criticising his lack of love for Ireland, and we don't know what Declan Rice's love for Ireland is. If you've got a real affinity and you want to play for this country, then fair enough. But if you're thinking about your commercial appeal and the legacy, or even just endorsements and stuff like that, obviously you're going to pick the bigger brand, which is Three Lions and England and stuff. But then there is a possibility that you're not going to achieve the heights that is required to be a lion forever, you know.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you end up sort of going in and getting a couple of caps, but it does seem as if everybody believes that, and Keith Andrew was talking about it yesterday, this guy is on a trajectory to something pretty amazing, and like on that basis you have to assume that actually he will end up getting a bunch of caps for England. And so the old, was Dennis Wise thing about 5 England caps is worth 55 Irish caps, was it him that said that? I think it was a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree. Like, I think that's a load of crap saying that. I think obviously if it's 55 versus 5, you're going to take the 55 for Ireland.
Well, Dennis Wise was saying, that's what he was saying. Exactly.
That's complete nonsense. Yeah. I mean, if you want to grow your brand, you play 55 international games and hope you play in the tournaments and you become a legend over here, you know. But if Declan Rice, I'm sure every young footballer at that level is thinking he can go right to the top. And if he feels that's where he's going and doesn't have any national affinity to either country, then why wouldn't he pick England?
A bunch of comments coming in on various topics this morning. Paddy Harity was definitely one that stood out for me. Full-time referees, crying laughing face, followed by, I think, crying even harder laughing face. My God, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
He's right.
He's not having it.
He's completely right.
Seamus Gagan, to be fair, thanks to @Jack Grealish, we just have to point to his mistake out to any young players that have represented Ireland and are thinking of switching. #Curse of the Irish.
I'm not sure if that's a mistake, if we can deem that a mistake yet.
And also, that's his decision.
Yeah.
Like, so it's never a mistake. That's just a decision he's made. It's not like, he doesn't get to go back then and go, well, geez, I made a balls of that there, I'm going to come back now and declare for Ireland again. He's made his call, that's it. Make your decision and on you go.
He'll come good yet.
By that you mean he'll declare for Ireland. Kevin Kane says, "Morning guys, has Michael Obafemi declared for Nigeria, or is that just a rumour? Also, when does O'Neill name his squad for the Turkey match? It'd be great to see Rice, Cullen, Cunningham and Doherty in it." We'd somebody emailed us during the week that a story from the Nigeria Guardian, which had quotes from Michael, off the top of my head, Michael Obafemi's mother, I think, saying that he would rather declare for Nigeria, and there was a top source in Nigerian football as well, have been quoted as well as saying that he'd been involved with them on a couple of trips and was a great lad and may well end up declaring for Nigeria. So that's kind of really the state of play as I see it, in that it was originally reported on allnigeriansoccer.com. So that's the latest state of play there. Again, it's one of those ones where if he whoever he decides to declare for, that's who he decides to declare for. There's those quotes now we have for you. He travelled to Abuja with us. This was the top source. Best player for Team Nigeria UK. Just last week we got a call from his mother that he wants to change. He wants to play for Nigeria and not for Ireland. Anyway, look, we'll see from the horse's mouth, I'm sure, at some point soon. Keane O'Donovan says, were the testers the only people not to know that Sanchez was on his way to Manchester? It's a fair observation. The entire rest of the planet was talking about the fact that he was on his way to Manchester, and they rock up at Arsenal's training ground.
Is a drugs test not part of your medical?
I don't know. I certainly wouldn't presume so.
Yeah, neither would I. But if it is, then we've got nothing to worry about here. Then you would suspect that the Manchester United... If it is, I'm saying this is a big caveat now. Yeah. If you do get drugs tested when you're doing a medical, then it would have shown up that we don't need to be worried about this whereabouts, saying that he's not trying to hide something. But then obviously the other case is that he probably isn't tested when it comes to his medical, so we need to maintain that level of suspicion for sure. We can't just let it slide completely.
And also, that test, I don't think, like a United test wouldn't do for the UCAD or whoever it was that was coming to test him. They'd have to do their own independent thing. But I'm not. Also, it's an interesting question. One other comment that we're going to get to before we go is just a very simple hello from Japan from Michael O'Carroll. So very good morning to you, and depending where you are in the globe, get in contact with us. Let us know what you're doing. It's just coming up at 8:20 on this Friday morning here on OTBAM. We've lots of good stuff for you to come. We're going to talk to Kevin Kilbane. We're going to talk to Mike Quirke as well to preview the National Football League this weekend. And Owen's been in conversation with Aislinn Desmond of Kerry as well. So all of that to come. Keep your comments coming. But in the meantime, Andy Lee was in studio last night. He was in with Nathan. He was talking about Michael Conlon and the fact that he's bringing Adam Booth on board as his coach. We also got the latest on the Daniel Jacobs fight. Unfortunately, if you were hoping to see Andy back in the ring in April, you might have to wait a little bit longer.
While you're here, the Danny Jacobs fight, is it going to be Spike O'Sullivan, do you think?
It looks very much like it now. When I was here and I spoke with Joe, I said, Joe, they're probably just using my name just to come to some agreement with Spike O'Sullivan to force him to accept terms, and that more or less that's what happened. But good luck.
How do you feel about that?
Disappointed, because there wasn't. If they didn't come to agreement, then I was the next in line to get the fight. But a little disappointed. But good luck to Spike O'Sullivan. I don't begrudge him the fight. He's worked hard. He's won his last fight, which was a good fight in America, in Canada, on HBO. So he deserves a big fight, and I wish him luck. Yeah, it's going to be a tough fight.
What do you think?
Tough fight. Yeah. Tough fight. Just in the styles, and just the way styles make fights, where you might beat Nathan might beat me, but I might beat you. Spike O'Sullivan will be coming forward and being aggressive, but Danny Jacobs kind of has the wrong style for him. I think it's a tough fight, but Spike is a big puncher and has a puncher's chance.
So then you going to the gym was worth my while. You just said I could beat him. I wouldn't want to try it out now.
Yeah, I think we'd all pay to see that, Nathan, if I'm being honest with you. That Andy Lee on the show last night, you can check out that full piece on the Facebook page and on offtheball.com as well. We're going to talk to Kevin Kilbane very shortly, but before all of that, it's a real fascinating story, this one. I'm sure it's been on your radar over the last year thereabouts. But this week, the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Geneva is meeting to hear the case of 39 Russian athletes versus the IOC. They're appealing the decision to strip them of medals from the Sochi Games in 2014 and ban them from future Olympic Games. Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov is the whistleblower in the Russian state-sponsored doping scandal. He's giving evidence in the case via conference call from an undisclosed location in the US. Needless to say, he needs to be in a position to do that. Rodchenkov is the focus of Icarus, the now Oscar-nominated documentary on Netflix on the topic. His lawyer, Jim Walden, who also appears in the documentary, we spoke to him before coming on air. We began by asking him to remind us of Rodchenkov's situation, why he fled to the United States, and why he can't return to Russia.
Dr. Rodchenkov came here because a friend of his from the Kremlin told him that FSB agents were coming to stage Dr. Rodchenkov's suicide. They were going to murder him, and that is because the World Anti-Doping Agency had begun an investigation after a German documentary came out about state-sponsored doping in Russia. The FSB wanted to basically blame him, and as a mechanism to blame him, they wanted to first permanently silence him. And so after getting word from his friend at the Kremlin, Dr. Rodchenkov escaped in the middle of the night, just as the net was closing. So it's a story that could be told in a novel, but it has the benefit of being true.
Yeah, and Icarus details this section of his life very, very well. So if we fast forward to what's just happened in the last 2 months, then it seems very curious to me that the very day Rodchenkov was meeting US immigration officials in the hopes of securing a more permanent basis in the United States, a story comes out that Russian authorities have filed drug trafficking charges against him. Is that me being a cynic that these two stories happen to occur in the same day, or is there something in this?
Well, like you, I don't believe in coincidence. So how the Russians found out, I don't know, but it seems to me to be naive to think that just lucky timing on their part. Russia's a determined adversary. They obviously have some connections with folks in the United States. I don't think at the end of the day their flimsy, politically motivated charges are going to change anything for Dr. Rodchenkov. He's the most important whistleblower in the history of sport. This is the most systemic and complicated cheating system anyone's ever devised, and he's obviously doing a lot of good for clean sport in telling his story. So I'm confident that the Russians won't have an impact at the end of the day in what happens to Dr. Rodchenkov, but God knows that they are pulling out all the stops to try to get him back.
There isn't, to my understanding, Jim, an extradition agreement between the US and Russia. It did, however, strike me in preparation for this piece that there's a, depending on sort of which sources you believe, there does seem to be at least some relationship, depending on what the extent of that might be, of course, between the leaders of both countries, the US and Russia. It wouldn't feel to me in that context that the US is necessarily the safest place for him to be. Is he going to stay there?
I sure hope so. Whatever's going on with the larger inquiry into the relationship between our administration, our current administration, and the Kremlin, I'm not going to weigh in on that. I don't know the state or the scope of the evidence, and I think that we should all do well to reserve judgment until the investigation's done. But whatever that is, I don't think it's going to have any impact on what happens with Dr. Rodchenkov. I think that he has a tremendous amount of support, not just in the United States, but in many countries that care about clean sport. And again, I'm confident that his application is going to be judged on the merits. There is absolutely no question that if he was expelled from the United States and had to go back to Russia, because in this context, he wouldn't have a choice to go to a third country. He would literally be put on a plane, sent back there. He would be dead or worse immediately. And that's what the Russians want. So in these circumstances, the United States is still the beacon of light in terms of protecting people. And I sincerely doubt that anyone in the U.S. would simply send him back to his death.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy consideration to have on a weekly basis, and many factors there that you've gone through that are obviously outside of his control. I'm interested to know, because I think he has protection, if I'm right, currently in the US. I'm interested to know about that and what his day-to-day existence is like at the minute.
Well, I'll comment on the second piece first. He has been very focused. He is helping so many different agencies in so many different investigations, and this is obviously a hugely complex set of facts. The existence of his diaries really helps a lot because he was fastidious about keeping the diary, and that certainly helps refresh his recollection with respect to some of the details. But
because that's probably the only piece of evidence he has. Sorry to interrupt. That's probably the only piece of evidence almost that he has. I mean, we've mentioned about the hurry that he left Russia in. I'm assuming that doesn't allow for you to bring a whole bunch of stuff that would support, hard evidence that would support his claims.
Well, fortunately, he did take a hard drive with him, and so he was in a position to provide that to the World Anti-Doping Authority and Professor McLaren. And many of the documents on there that he was able to keep corroborated his testimony. And then Professor McLaren found another trove of documents from a separate whistleblower that were even more explosive and more corroborative of Dr. Rodchenkov's account. So to get back to your earlier question, he's really been working around the clock to help the IOC, help WADA, help other enforcement authorities. And I suspect that that's going to happen for a long time, given the fact that WADA just recently recovered the top secret internal database of the Russian lab, which had thousands and thousands of adverse analytical findings for doped Russian athletes. My understanding is that WADA is not going to stop until it brings cases to CAS, regardless of whatever the international federations want to do. I think WADA is going to bring cases to CAS against all of those athletes, and Dr. Rodchenkov is going to be an important part of those cases.
Absolutely. The story of Grigory Rodchenkov as a human and in terms of his legal fate and his own safety really is something that's going to be so fascinating over the coming months and years. But the one thing I'm interested in is Grigory Rodchenkov, the whistleblower, done? Is he done as a whistleblower? Has he revealed all the information he has? Has he turned over all the cards at this point?
Not by a long shot. Given the frenetic pace of this, and unfortunately, if he had been contacted by the IOC at the time of the New York Times interview, they would have had time to fully debrief him. But given the fact that they didn't contact him until almost a year after the two disciplinary commissions were formed, no one from the IOC or WADA has sat down to fully debrief him on everything he knows. That process is really just starting now, and his information goes back to the 80s. And he's aware of doping, bribery, corruption. Even the Sochi Games itself, the story of how Russia got the Sochi Games in itself is, could be a long chapter in terms of his cooperation. So, unfortunately, no, he has much more information to give, and he is looking forward to working with WADA and the IOC and other enforcement authorities in the coming years so that the full scope of this truth becomes known.
And we look forward to hearing that truth over the next couple of years, I'm sure. Jim Walden there, who's the lawyer for Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov. That case wraps up tomorrow, and the findings which will be known, I think, over the early days of February. So we shall hear that. The Winter Games obviously begin very soon, so I'm sure those athletes will want to know. 39 athletes before the court and 3 to follow afterwards. You can check out that full piece, by the way. It'll be up on offtheball.com as soon as we're done here, so in about 30, 45 minutes thereabouts. That is that for the minute. Keep your comments coming in. We've had some good ones to hashtag OTBAM. So keep the comments coming in, including for our football piece, because it's time to talk to Kevin Caban. We've got some good stuff to talk to him about. We're going to talk Jose Mourinho, who has signed on with Manchester United for 2020 at least, maybe 2021. We're going to talk about Antonio Conte too, who's been getting a pretty rough time, certainly by his own book. Chelsea are not all that happy about it. We're going to ask Kev if Paul Scholes is the solution to all things Wales. Of course, it'll be interesting for us because games of importance coming up against Wales over the next bit. Potentially Ronaldo to United, and if we've time, if he doesn't ramble on too much, we'll ask him a little bit about Declan Rice as well. Kev, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you keeping?
I'm Brand, good man. From the broadcast point.
That's especially if you were doing that this morning.
Here, Jose Mourinho, right, signed up to 2020, may well be 2021, which would already well outstrip the usual sort of 3 or 4 years that he, or even 2 or 3 years that he tends to remain at clubs. I was reading a thing over the last few days, 442, the football magazine, in the middle of last year had him at 5th in their sort of overall power rankings, the top 50 managers on the planet at the minute. And I kind of was interested to get your thoughts about where Mourinho currently sits in that overall sort of power ranking, and the extension of that is that if he were to leave United, how many of the top clubs would actually be looking for this guy?
Well, there's been talk quite recently, hasn't there, of PSG again, and PSG, it does seem there is a bit of a power struggle in that dressing room, and it would probably take someone of the character of Jose Mourinho to go in there and maybe with a bit of a controlling influence over that dressing room. That would maybe seem the ideal destination, you would think, if he were to leave Man United. That looked on the cards before he signed his contract. In relation to where he is in the world standings at the moment, you have to look at it probably where he is in Premier League standings. you'd probably think, certainly from an attacking point of view, certainly from watching a side, watching a team go out and play, I would probably put him as in third behind Guardiola and Klopp at the moment. You could even argue maybe Pochettino as well, certainly from a pleasing on the eye perspective. That's the way you'd maybe look at it. But I think Jose Mourinho would simply look at it from the fact is, well, look, we're second in the Premier League. We are way behind Manchester City. He's probably pointed to the fact is that Manchester City have spent more money than them. I'd look at the fact is that that's not necessarily always the case, because Man United's wage bill is as high, if not higher, than Man City at the moment.
Is this older, more melancholic version of the previous form of Jose Mourinho we are now seeing? Is he more concerned with his legacy? Does he feel a sense of nostalgia about parts of his career now and wants to create more of a dynasty than his usual 3-year stint at clubs?
Well, he's definitely more concerned about his legacy. He's always been concerned about that, Owen, hasn't he? I think we see that throughout his career. He's constantly reminding us all of how many trophies he's won. And I spoke about this only in the last couple of weeks. You only need to look at United when they won the Europa League last season. Jose was on the stand when the trophy was being lifted, and he was signalling three trophies. That's what they'd won across the course of this season. So I think, in general, I think you only need to look at that fact. You only need to look at that fact is he is more than concerned about his legacy. In general, when he's been at clubs, he's won a tournament, or certainly won the championship, won the league title in his second season. That is not going to be the case this year. So there'll be more pressure on him next season. And I think regardless of the contract, if he hasn't won the Premier League come the end of next season, you'd probably feel as though he'll be, maybe the suggestion would be that he'll be walking away anyway.
Antonio Conte, we all kind of expect, is going to leave Chelsea probably at the end of the season. He was another one of those managers who might have been in the frame for that PSG gig. And it's kind of interesting this week. So he's been a bit hacked off, suggestions that he's suggesting himself that he's not got that much input in club transfers. And that it's been driven by executives. Like, on the one hand, Conte dictating the pace, maybe here ahead a little bit of his own departure and kind of maybe creating the narrative to his own his own needs, obviously. But on the other hand, a bunch of suits at Chelsea aren't happy with him. Who cares?
Yeah, Nathan made actually a decent point regarding Conte last night in the Chelsea
in itself is a rarity, Kev, so yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, that's why it sticks in my mind, because this only happens once every year or so. But the point he made was, why would Chelsea change the structure of the club that they've used over the last 10 or 15 years, particularly under Abramovich? They've got a transfer policy in place, and whether or not people agree with maybe letting Ancelotti go over the last few years, letting Mourinho go after they've won titles, and even if you look at Roberto Di Matteo when they let him go after he'd won the Champions League, regardless of what we think about that, the structure's been in place that's been geared towards success. You only need to look at last season. I think there was a suggestion last year that all wasn't quite right with Antonio Conte. He signed a new contract, but we fully understand the way that Chelsea have gone about things. Their transfer policy has been in place, and the manager has to come in and fit in around that structure. He knew full well before he came into Chelsea that was always going to be the case. The problem being now is that he feels as though they are maybe not delivering the right type of player, or the right kind of player, or the right calibre of player that he would want at the club. And it's been plainly obvious this season that they've had a few issues when they've had the injuries. When Kante was injured through the early part of this season, they struggled in the midfield. There's obviously an issue with David Luiz as well. There are issues defensively as well when we know Chelsea last season was so good. So and not least up front, Diego Costa, I feel as though that they have not replaced him necessarily, and that there have been the problems throughout, and I think he knows that.
It's a very easy get-out clause as well. It strikes me that, like, he gets to say, well, these players weren't, the greatest players in the world, I didn't really sign them. And also the timing of it is a bit bizarre, because they're actively in the market for Dzeko and Palmieri as well. Like, it's wait until the end of the window, you don't get your players, and then you have a bit of a cut off them.
Yeah, but it's easier though during the window. Then, of course, it puts more pressure on them to get the players that you would want. Out of the players they have been linked with, certainly from the striker's point of view, perspective, should I say. Then you almost look, Dzeko you'd feel be the best option. But I'm with you what you said there, Adrian. I think it's almost like a get out. I think Conte knew full well the arrangement when he went into the club. You coach the team. That's the arrangement across most top European clubs, the way that Chelsea have gone about things. And I think he maybe put up or shut up. It feels to me, though, that the writing's on the wall for Conte, yeah.
Matt Dickinson is making the point in the Times this morning that Carlo Ancelotti is probably the most amenable man in football, that, as you say, he shut up and put up and was very, very successful. Do you think that there's another manager that exists at a top level in European football like Ancelotti that can be very, very successful while also being very, very agreeable?
Well, there's none that stick in my mind straight away. I think if you're looking for a manager that's going to come in and has that has had that recent success of going into a club, of just getting the team, first of all, just get them playing for you. He's done that wherever he's been. It didn't necessarily work at Bayern because he'd worked at such a high pace and at such a certain, or in a certain way under Pep Guardiola, that it was difficult then for the team to revert back to a different type of method. But it looks to me that if Conte were to leave, he's the ideal man, though, Owen. Yeah, there's no one else that's maybe. I mean, you're looking at Thomas Tuchel at the moment. There's still talk of Bayern with him going in there. I don't know. There aren't many names around at the moment that spring to mind that you would say that they're the ideal replacement if Conte were to leave.
Some talk this week, Kev, that Paul Scholes is going to join Ryan Giggs in the Wales coaching staff. It's definitely one of the more bizarre stories and would be absolutely fascinating from our point of view if it was to come off. I was actually thinking about it. Now, Paul Scholes, like,
how would you be fascinated?
Because they're two interesting. Is that the way to put it? Interesting characters for very different reasons.
I thought merely to his hair colour. That was all. But
you know, I'm all for the gingers. Here, I think the common perception of Paul Scholes, and to be fair to him, he does kind of hammer this home every time he appears on the TV, that he's not necessarily the most effervescent, brilliantly communicative person, but at the same time I could actually see that he would be really good on the training pitch.
It strikes me that he would have to be very, very good on a one-on-one basis, certainly that individual side of it, how he's going to maybe coach different players in certain situations that could arise on the pitch. It's a bold move from Giggs. Yes, he's got someone that's very, very trusted to him, but again, you're getting someone that lacks maybe the certain knowledge and the certain know-how of how certain associations would work. Certainly, it's very, very different from club level, but certainly from the actual player's perspective, how well does he actually know the Welsh players himself? So he's got to get up to speed with that. Yes, I would think there'll be someone else within Ryan Giggs' coaching staff that have got an appreciation for the Welsh FA, that's certainly got an understanding of the Welsh FA, and a majority of the squad as well. I think that is a necessity for Ryan Giggs to get that right. But certainly for Paul Scholes, I think it is quite intriguing what you're saying. I think it certainly gives a bit of spark around Wales, and if he can get that one over the line, I think it'll be excellent for them. Yeah.
You look at the Ryan Giggs appointment at Wales and potentially Scholes coming in there, but especially looking at Phil Neville and his appointment of the England women's team, and I can't quite make my mind up whether the class of '92 are the most entitled bunch of footballers that have existed or the most overrated bunch of footballers when it comes to potential management roles that have ever existed. What do you think?
I think Manchester United, ex-Man United players in general do seem to get the pick of the job. You only need to look across the course of the last maybe 20, 30, 40 years, wherever it would be. Since Sir Alex Ferguson has gone into Man United, every single player that's left, it always seems to be saying, have you learned from what Alex has said? Or are you going to go on and you're going to take it forward? You only need to look at the amount of ex-Man United players that's still within the game that have worked under Alex Ferguson. But in general, there's an element to what you say is maybe true. None of that group of players have necessarily gone on and had huge success. Nicky Butt's having, by all accounts, good success within the youth structure at Manchester United. But in general, it hasn't necessarily all gone to plan. You can tell they're all very, very strong-willed. That's been instilled in them from when they were young lads. That strong will might come across as a little bit of arrogance at times to a lot of the players, and not necessarily that humility that's needed to be a success in modern day coaching and management. So I think this is a big test for Ryan Giggs. This is a huge test for him to first of all to get on side with well, maybe get his reputation back on track. First of all, is what I would say. Secondly, I would think maybe his coaching credentials have maybe called into question on a number of occasions, so he's got to get that back on track too.
I think as well that bringing somebody like Paul Scholes in some ways, while he might be good around the training pitch, He's going to be, I mean, the two of them know each other extremely well. I think that Ryan Giggs probably needs somebody there in the way that Martin O'Neill has Roy Keane, that I think he's going to need somebody there who's going to say to him, listen, this isn't the right call, and is going to challenge him and is not going to be a yes man. And I mean, I don't know Paul Scholes intimately, but you might suggest that given their history that he might not be exactly that person. And I know he isn't. He's confirmed a goalkeeping coach. I think he was there in the previous regime, and nobody else has yet been confirmed. Listen, let's hope he gets it all spectacularly wrong, and we go ahead and win that Nations League, Kev, that we all love.
No, I would just say, well, we won't go on the Nations, but at that point you've made those perfect. He will definitely need someone alongside him to tell him that isn't the right decision, that isn't the right call, and Paul Scholes certainly strikes you as that individual. Yeah. What about the Nations League then? What were you saying there?
Go on, give us an explainer there, Kev. We've only got another hour and a half to fill. Go on. What have we got?
No, we'll leave that for another day. I'm quite calm in my explanation, Adrian, the other night.
You might have been very calm. It didn't mean that it made any sense.
All right, okay. Okay, did you understand it?
Not at all. No chance.
Do you understand it in general?
No, I thought I knew it, and then I listened to you, and then I was totally confused.
All right, go on then. Come on. Honest to God.
One final point, Kev. Jose Mourinho saying that Cristiano Ronaldo is a wonderful player and every manager would like to have him. At what point does Jose Mourinho start using the media to up his interest in Ronaldo? Because obviously he wants to bring him back to Manchester United.
I mean, I'd probably put the point out there. Would you pay 100 million right now for Cristiano Ronaldo, given the form that he's in? He's certainly haven't. If anyone's been watching Real Madrid, which I'm sure a lot have, we've been watching Real Madrid in the last few weeks, the last couple of months. He seems to be having a strop constantly. I watched the game last weekend against Deportivo, and you only need to look at Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale, he put Real Madrid in front, put them 2-1 ahead in the game. He scored an absolutely beautiful goal, and Cristiano Ronaldo's celebration alongside him was embarrassing. It really was. He's clearly not happy with things that are happening at the club. Now we have heard the suggestion that this tax issue may be the problem, maybe the issue, maybe his problem. But in general, he's not happy on the pitch. I think his demeanour stinks when it's on the pitch at the moment. I think his body language stinks, and I think in general, I think that's manifesting across the team. And it seems to me that could be, or certainly in my eyes, and I'm watching it, that could be a problem for Zinedine Zidane, and that's something that he desperately needs to address, given that they've got these huge Champions League games against PSG on the horizon now.
Very quickly, Kev, finally, Declan Rice, so obviously a guy that we've been speaking about over the last few weeks since he came into that West Ham first team and really impressed everybody around him. But it seems now Gareth Southgate has been speaking about him. He's on their radar. The technical director has been, checking him out, sort of, are we going to get this guy in? How do you expect this thing to go? I know he was talking to Nathan after one of the West Ham games a few weeks ago and was talking about looking forward to getting back in for, he said, the squad, whether that was the senior squad or not, who knows, in terms of the Ireland setup, I think in February or March. What way do you expect this one to play out? This is a concern, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we'd spoken about it. Keith obviously spoke about it on his show yesterday. Nathan and I and even Richie spoke about it to an extent last night as well. I read Dan McDonald's piece today, which was very good in the Indo. Dan's piece this morning maybe struck me a little bit because we were talking about it in maybe hypothetical last night, and then all of a sudden now it becomes a reality when Gareth Southgate starts mentioning that he is actually on the radar for England. At the moment, we've got to take Declan Rice at his word. That's the way that I would look at it. But we have been stung before. We know with Jack Grealish, with what happened, it does get alarm bells ringing as soon as Gareth Southgate is starting to talk about a player that we know is of high class, and he is probably going to go on to have a really good career in the game, certainly at club and international level. If he decides to declare for England, I'd rather he did it sooner rather than later. If not, and he is fully committed to us, which it does seem to me he actually is, because he has shown an indication that, look, I've been part of the international senior setup before. Certainly was part of the squad when they were training over the last year or so with Martin O'Neill. If that's what he wants, I think it needs to be clarified fairly quickly, because the longer it drags on, the more uncertainty is going to come around this, and I think that puts more pressure on Declan Rice as a player himself as well. So I just want clarity sooner rather than later on this.
Kev, Sam has been in touch. He wants to make the Kev's Fridge weekly segment.
Is that right?
Is there any reason for us to have another look inside the Kevin Kilbane fridge this week? Is it still stacked full of chocolate and Lucozade?
I'll tell you what, I will actually show you, right? No, I will. I've got to pick your laptop up here as well, but I will actually show you. The thing is this week, right, the fridge hasn't actually changed in the last week.
It's still the same, is it? The eggs are still there, yeah.
Yeah, there's the eggs.
Yeah.
There's the Corona and the Becks.
Oh, you haven't even drunk the beer.
Oh, there was more to the beer than we initially
I don't
realised.
get a chance to drink it.
Wow.
And then there you go.
Oh, the chocolate's taking a bit of a hit, yeah.
Yeah, the kids were around last week, so that's taking a hit because of them.
Good man, Kevin. Get yourself down to the shop. Good man.
Yeah, all the best, lads.
Thanks a lot. Take it easy. Kevin Gilban there on the line from Kevin Gilban Towers, and still hasn't managed to get himself to the supermarket is the short story there.
It's like a kitchen from Grand Designs, those high ceilings and those kind of big windows in the ceiling.
We could definitely do one of those. I like those shows, you know, they sort of go and have a look inside somebody's house, like a celebrity's house, and
Cribs.
No, it's like what was it called recently? David Norris won it for his house. It was called like Celebrities. I've no idea what the name of the show is. No, it's not Through the Keyhole. Somebody's going to text in or tweet in.
I'm not going to be able to help you out on this one, unfortunately.
Anyway, yeah, that's my little sort of, what do they call it?
I don't know what you're talking about here. Basically,
guilty pleasure. That's my guilty pleasure.
Long story short, we need to see more rich people's houses.
Right. Right, okay. It's time definitely to move on. It's coming up on 10 to 9 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. We've had loads of tweets and comments and all of that good stuff. More of that coming and on. But before all of that, and we have as well a prize for the best comment of the day who's going to go ahead along to the National Cup finals at the basketball arena tomorrow night. So Basketball Ireland men's National Cup finalists are tomorrow night. Here's Temple Oaks' Puff Summers on how he ended up playing in Ireland.
So I played in England the year before, and I put up pretty good numbers. And then I'd actually signed in Denmark, and I was off on a Thursday to Denmark, and then my agent called me on Tuesday and was like, I have this team in Ballina in Ireland that want to sign you. And I didn't know that Ballina, I didn't know what it was, I didn't know what Mayo was, I didn't know anything about Ireland. So I was like, okay, like, what's it like? And he said the Danish league is probably better, but English speaking, stepping stone league, you'll be able to work on your own a lot and get better, and then you can move on, and the rest is history.
Do you watch a lot of football, and if you do, can you see what they're taking from basketball? When you see moves and plays and runs and presses, do you think to yourself, that's from basketball?
Yeah, 100%. You can even see like brush screens there. There's a lot of basketball aspects to it. I was very ignorant when I first came over here, but when I first saw a Gaelic match, I was just like straight away like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. And then Liam McHale actually had me out with the Stephenites when he was managing the club team, and I went out for a few trainings, and I was like, nah, not that similar.
Would you like to play it? I mean, if you got a long run at it, a couple of training sessions, you're not going to pick up.
If I had grown up here, I 100% would have played Gaelic football. Now, at my age now, and being out in that cold weather, I'm not a big fan of going out and doing it myself, but I love to watch it though.
I'm very much in the same boat myself. Puff Summers there in conversation with Oisin ahead of the national finals this weekend. Jared Byrne has been in touch. He says, hey lads, love the show. One quick thing, however, when he gave the scores from the golf, you omitted Seamus Power, who's also 3 under par alongside Shane Lowry. Apologies, Jared, for that. Grealish now firmly residing in the Where Are They Now file, is another comment in here from Peter Flick. Christopher Price says that hurling needs 2 referees. You're asking referees to run further, faster and for longer spells and adjudicate time and rule decisions while being 50 to 20 years older. With 2 referees, better decisions will be made in the last 20 minutes of a game when fitness matters.
Absolutely excellent point. Like, making them full-time referees is not going to remedy that.
I still believe it would. Brian Dunn on Periscope, he says, hello from Luxembourg. Good morning to you, Brian. First time listening, and I think I'm hooked. Delighted to have you along with us, and hopefully our next item can keep you hooked along as well as we turn to GAA. And it's of course the eve of the 2018 Alliance National Football League's return, so we're going to speak to Mike Quirke in just a second. Here's a bit of a flavour of what we're going to talk about. The big games, obviously, Dublin Kildare at Croke Park. We're going to talk about Kerry against Donegal, Monaghan up against Mayo, David Clifford and the comparisons between him and Con O'Callaghan, perhaps, that were made on the show last night. The best of the rest games as well, and maybe get Mike's take on how he thinks those National Cup finals are going to go at the basketball arena tomorrow night. Mike, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, guys. No bother.
Let's get stuck into it here straight away, if you don't mind. Dublin Kildare was the first port of call to get to Croke Park on Saturday night. 2 Leinster teams in Division 1 for the first time, in my recollection, in a while. Kildare probably feels maybe a little bit out of their depth. I read one stat where it was 2000, I think, since Dublin have last been beaten by a Leinster team in Division 1, and it's probably going to continue past tomorrow night.
Yeah, it might do, but I think it's a good time for Kildare to play them. If there's ever a good time to play them. I mean, you're talking about, they're obviously played a third string in the O'Byrne Cup, and they were over in South Africa enjoying themselves. They're not back in the groove as you would expect to see them in the summertime. So first game, maybe catch them a little bit cold. I think Kildare obviously have a lot more work done for this time of the year. So I think from their point of view, it's a good opportunity above on a big pitch to go and show their fitness and maybe catch them a little bit cold. Probably not going to beat them, but you'd hope they'd run them close.
Yeah, repeat obviously the Leinster final. The only thing is obviously that Dublin tend to go in hard from the off. I think there was a huge number of players who played in the 2016 final who started the 2017 first game of the league, and you kind of expect that maybe Jim Gavin is going to go in a similar route here as well, and they do tend to go in hard from the off, Dublin.
Oh, absolutely, and I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less from them, but at the same time, there's only so much you can do in a very short space of time, and I mean, everybody saw the pictures there, and justifiably so, enjoying themselves on holiday after winning 3 in a row. But eventually there has to be some little down spell, and you just imagine, like, from Kildare's point of view, this is a good game for them to get started. It's a big shot when they know Dublin can't be anywhere near 100%, and you're just hoping in from their point of view that it's not a blow. They want to make this one a close one to prove that they're progressing a little bit,
And a question about Dublin, and I guess it can kind of spread out to the likes of Mayo and Kerry, and in terms of how Jim Gavin used the league as this springboard back in 2013 to launch this, what turns out to be a bit of a dynasty at this point with Dublin. You look at the players that have come in at just the right time. You look at the players who've gone over the hill and then another player comes up. You look at Bernard Brogan and Conor O'Callaghan's careers dovetailing beautifully. You look at Philly McMahon potentially on a downslope now, and then you look at the likes of Michael Fitzsimons playing the football of his life, and David Byrne coming in 2 years ago to be a lock in that starting 15 for Dublin. So that always tends to happen with them, and it tends to happen with the great teams. Who have you seen from this Dublin team in particular that could be the next person to be a lock in that starting 15? Is the Brian Howard-esque player the one we should be looking out for early in the league?
Well, he's the obvious one anyway. I mean, he's obviously the Raheny guy. He looks like he's ready made to step into the team this year, and it's probably, again, a follow on for that. It's probably good timing when you look at maybe Dennis Bastick stepping away and Michael Dara maybe on that downward curve, and now they seem to be producing another guy who looks like a really high quality athlete who can play a ball and getting around the field, and I think when you're talking about young players and from other counties, like, you're still looking at Conor O'Callaghan, and we don't even talk about him as a young guy anymore. Like, he's still only a kid. While last year was obviously his breakout year in his first season, he's still only going to improve in this year and next. And they still look like they've got although they're not winning minors or under 21 All Ireland. Well, they're only under 21 All Ireland obviously, but they're still producing guys that look like they're going to step in seamlessly and play at that level.
Been a lot of talk of 3-year plans down your way during the week, Mike. So Kerry Donegal is the next port of call, Sunday 2 o'clock in Killarney, and Eamon Fitz has definitely been mentioning the 3-year plan a little bit over the last few days. I did kind of wonder, just in terms of the year that's gone, and in terms of the Miko documentary as well, if the pits of the soul of Kerry men and women have been stirred a little bit over the last little while. I mean, there was no McGrath Cup either, so actually there's suddenly a real excitement about the start of the league here.
There's a fierce excitement. I heard somebody talking about the league last night, and it was almost that it was going to a funeral or something. They were so depressed about it. Like, we're thoroughly excited about the league down here. There's going to be. I think it's nearly forced on him, and that he's going to have to play so many guys that don't have a lot of experience at this level. Guys like Sean O'Shea and Cormac Coffey, David Clifford, the obvious guy. But there's a lot of those guys from those successful minor teams now that his hand is being forced. I mean, Kerry or something. I think it's about 19 of the established guys who played championship in the last year or so that are unavailable for the start of the National League, and that's a colossal number. So we're going to get an opportunity to see these guys that we've been craving about, and see how good Sean O'Shea is. People talk about Sean O'Shea like he could be, Kerry's Conor O'Callaghan and have that kind of a success in his first year. That'll obviously remain to be seen, but we haven't had the chance to see him. So I think it's very exciting kind of a league for Kerry. Not in terms of an expectancy to win the league or to win how many games, but just in terms of getting to see these young guys at that level.
A new person that we might be keeping an eye out for as well is James Walden. Some people might not know who he is, but he's not even a player. He was drafted in by Fitzmaurice over the Christmas. Obviously, you'd probably know him quite well. I know he's more the Killarney side of the basketball scene in Kerry. Mark Ingle came in with Dublin last year and had a very material effect, especially in that All-Ireland semi-final against Tyrone. Who is James Walden and what can he bring to the Kerry setup?
Yeah, he's a basketball coach. Obviously, first and foremost, he would have coached a lot of ladies basketball. He would have coached international basketball with Ireland. Would have a really good basketball coaching pedigree. As far as I'm aware, he'd be the same club as David Clifford and Fossa, but wouldn't have had any Gaelic football experience or coaching experience in Gaelic football. And I don't think I think the role at the start of the year, I don't think it's going to be a huge one. I don't think he's going to have much to do in the National League. I think as the summer progresses and the ground gets hard and football becomes more focused as opposed to maybe physical conditioning, I think then he'll start to dip in and out and bring some kind of basketball nous to the idea. I assume that's the plan. I mean, we don't really know. It hasn't really been discussed publicly, but he's certainly a guy who would put a new kind of a new view on things from the basketball front.
Patience has kind of been the buzzword, one of the other buzzwords down there again this week in terms of some of those younger players coming through, Mike. And I know I mentioned the 3-year plan. I always thought a Kerry 3-year plan was win the All-Ireland in year 1, 2 and 3. Will you talk to us a little bit about those two names we've mentioned so far? I know Aaron Kernan was on with us last night and he was making that comparison. Will you just talk to us a little bit about David Clifford and about Seanie O'Shea as well, what we might expect from these two?
Yeah, again, I would expect more from Sean O'Shea this year than David Clifford, and David Clifford is just, he's being heralded a genius and rightly so after his minor stuff. But I just think there's too much kind of hope and responsibility being lashed onto this guy's shoulders. I mean, at minor level, he had a very distinct size advantage over every guy he played. He's a strong guy. He can play obviously off both feet. He's quick, but not super quick. And at senior level, you can just imagine the likes of Neil McGee or some guy above in Donegal salivating at the chance to go and cut a head off him in his first game at senior level. And he's going to find it tough early on. But I think, again, and I know patience, it's a cliche now talking about this guy, but if we can just have a little bit of time and give him games and don't rush to judgment after a first game or two, he's going to be an unbelievable senior player for Kerry. But again, it's going to take a little bit of time. I think Seanie O'Shea is actually more ready-made this year to make an impact. He was involved training with the panel last year. We played against him in a couple of club games. The guy looked devastating. He looked like he was ready to go. So he's an athletic guy, half forward. He's a scorer. He can go past you. He can catch. He can do it all. He's just been kind of kept under wraps really last year. So, again, you're hoping that those two will get a big chance and will take that chance.
Just before we move on to the next game, Mike, what did you make of Mikey Sheehy's comments recently that the Kerry support was shocking in that All-Ireland semi-final replay against Mayo last year?
They didn't go down well down here anyway. I mean, there was a couple of points obviously, and I was at the game obviously, and Mayo tend to do this to a lot of people. Mayo tend to seem like there's 10 to 1 on everybody, and it did seem that that day that there was far more Kerry supporters that were far more Mayo supporters that were far more vocal, far more vociferous, and Kerry tend to be like that anyway, and especially when you're playing in a game where you don't give the supporters much to shout about, and Kerry didn't play very well that day, and Kerry people got quieter and quieter, and what were there didn't really seem like it was. And to be honest, I mean, they probably haven't the best relationship with the Kerry supporters, given the fact that they were the ones that locked the gates, and kept people out of Fitzgerald Stadium, not allowed people to watch training anymore. A decision, incidentally, that I would have agreed with and thought it was the right decision, but Kerry supporters were very unhappy with that. And this is just kind of after irking them a small little bit again. So I think they're very anxious to see young players play this year, and they want to see the product of those minor teams. And I just think they're putting themselves under a small little bit more pressure in terms of, I've got to play these young kids now, and hopefully they can do well and maybe keep the supporters off our back for a little bit.
Monaghan Mayo, 2 o'clock on Sunday in Clone. This is one of the other games. Then 2:30 over in Tumas, Galway and Tyrone. Just from Mayo perspective, they gave relegation a pretty good rattle last season before eventually sort of pulling it out of the bag at the 11th hour. In the context of the Super 8s, obviously, Mike, and the maybe increased games over a shorter period of time, is that maybe easy in approach, something that might actually pay a little bit of dividends for them this year? Yeah,
it's a fine balance now between going in easy and getting relegated. like the first and foremost, you want to stay in that Division 1 because that's where you're getting those quality games to propel you onto the Championship, obviously. But Mayo themselves are missing a pile of players for this game. They're down a load of guys, Lee Keegan and plenty others. And Monaghan actually beat them, obviously, in the corresponding fixture last year. So, and Monaghan are always a team that seem to, from the very start of that league, they seem to be hitting the ground running. And I just think from, like, Mayo is similar to Dublin without the success, obviously. They've had such long years and they've had such successful campaigns relatively up to the actual winning of the trophy. They've played in September now in so many years. And also, as we know, they're so, all over the place in terms of their travel arrangements from Dublin and guys training in Dublin and training in Mayo, and they only meet up at games or some of these National League games. So it's hard to judge Mayo, and I don't think we will, early in these league games. But, Monaghan, you'd imagine, would have the advantage in this one.
Yeah, in a strange way, the mood music around Mayo seems better this year than it was last year. And I suppose when you think about that a little bit, it does make a bit of sense, because Andy Moran is the only one really who people could say has aged into the point where he might start to disimprove at this point. But again, after last year's performance, we definitely can't take that for granted. So it seems like all is well and good in Mayo, and that there's a good chance that they're going to keep on an upward trajectory of anything this year.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. I mean, now you'd probably they have a couple, but you'd like to see maybe one or two guys that are, like that Evan Regan and a couple other guys that maybe would be pushing on and putting Andy Moore and putting other guys under a little bit more pressure for starting spots. I mean, they're still probably talking about roughly the same kind of 21 guys that are going to be involved, primarily in terms of the Championship, again, like you had last year. So that's the only thing you'd like to see a little bit, like you spoke earlier about the regeneration of Dublin and how they keep finding these guys. Mayo haven't really, save maybe Paddy Durkin and a couple, they haven't really unearthed a lot of these kind of, blue chip young guys who are going to push the older guys out. And, Andy Moran, he was the best footballer. He probably played the best football of his life last year. Can he sustain that again? I wouldn't bet against him, but you'd imagine they want something in the next couple of years to take that spot.
Absolutely. And just to touch back on Adrian's point there about going in easy to the league, like, we have this month of April as well, which any progress you make, it could stunt that progress, and certainly in terms of momentum, it might kill it. And it seems at this point now, when we look at the club-only month for April, it seems to be a case-by-case basis. And I don't think we've heard any positive sound, or any definite sound really from Kerry as opposed to what they will do. And I'm interested to just get your take on that. Like, are you expecting to have David Moran and Barry John Keane back with you? Because I know you're involved with Rahilly's this year. And do you think that this club month for April will be represented all around the country with whatever your decision is going to be?
See, I think in Kerry, I think they're after getting it pretty much as spot on as you can get it in terms of the club stuff. Like, I'm managing Cairns Rahilly's, and they're in Division 1 of the County League and senior club, so senior club championship and senior county championship. So we start our County League in March the 11th, and we have 2 rounds, and then we get to April and we play 4 rounds of the club championship. So our club championship is played off to a conclusion in April. With a final at the end of April. Now, we won't see our county guys for any training session during April, but they are going to be available to us for each game. And then they're gone, and we play County League for the entire remainder of the year. And once Kerry are eliminated from the Championship, September, whatever, the first or second week in September, our County Championship will kick start, and then it's going to run for 8 weeks. And like, while I don't like our county championship being run off in a kind of a blitz fashion, and you get one injury or you get one suspension and you're gone and you miss the whole championship, I think under the constraints of the Super 8s and everything else, I think it's about as fair and as good a club player can hope to get in terms of getting 13 rounds of a county league, in terms of getting your club championship in April and your county championship in September. It's defined. You can book your holidays. You know when you're on. You know when you're not on. I think for club stuff now, I think it's about as good as you're going to get.
Yeah, it seems to make a whole pile of sense. Just before we let you go, Mike, the interest to get your thoughts on the National Cup finals at the Basketball Arena tomorrow night. We've had Kieran Donaghy on over the last few weeks looking ahead to this. There's no Kerry team involved, obviously, but UCD Marion against Black Amber Temple Oak. What way are you thinking it's going to go?
Toss of a coin. I've seen both of them a lot now, to be fair, and I really like both of them. Temple Oak is probably a little bit, maybe a little bit older, or a little bit more grinded out. They've got a little bit of athleticism with Larkin Murphy and different guys, but I just think Marion are really, really smart to play, really high IQ basketball. They got a couple of guys that are really, really good to watch, like some Mike Garrow, they're American, obviously Barry Drum, point guard, Conor Miller. They're just really intelligent guys that they play really well together, real high IQ stuff. And I mean, speaking of basketball, I suppose you probably covered that guy CJ Fulton yesterday for St. Malachy's in the schools for A final under 16. Guy had 47 points on 15 3-pointers, but on the best exhibition of shooting that was ever seen in any arena in Ireland by an Irish guy. And it's funny, the basketball is getting. I think Donaghy is Mr. Basketball for Ireland at the moment. It's after taking off a little bit again.
Yeah, I did see that. All right, it was an incredible achievement. Mike, listen, enjoy the games over the weekend and including the basketball. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, guys. No bother.
Pleasure. Mike Quirke there joining us on the line from Kerry ahead of a big weekend. The Kerry soul has been stoked on is the short story from this morning's OTBAM in its entirety.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mike uses the term Fitzmaurice's hand has been forced a little bit when it comes to playing these young lads, and I think in hindsight the fact that Kerry have 19 players unavailable going into this weekend could be seen as a huge blessing in disguise, because there was a lot of criticism last year when Sean O'Shea was supposed to be playing for his club at a big under-21 match, and was then called up to the county panel for the Galway game in the All-Ireland quarter-final. Club obviously weren't happy with this. They said they thought Sean O'Shea mightn't get a run. As it turned out, Sean O'Shea didn't get a run that weekend under Fitzmaurice, and a lot of people have used that stick to beat Fitzmaurice with. I would put it to them that if the game was more in a melting pot and Sean O'Shea was needed, he might have been brought on, so I don't think it's necessarily fair. But I think the whole forcing the hand thing, I think that's a key word there, that Fitzmaurice has to do this now, and whether he likes it or not, these young players are going to have to be given a run out. Like the cynic or the person who wants to play down the Kerry chances will say to you, well, sure, David Clifford's the only bona fide superstar. The rest of them have all just been great minor teams.
Well, it seems there's 4 or 5 players coming through there.
No, there is. As I say, that would be the person who's
like
playing
if you
down
look
the
like
chances.
a county like Mayo, who have Conor Loftus and maybe Stephen Cohen coming through, like in terms of the refreshing, I suppose, the fairly decent template they've had over the last few years, but refreshing that and trying to kick it on to the next level.
We haven't seen them reach superstar status.
But you look at what I'm saying is, you look at Kerry, and actually, this could be a team to look at this year.
Yeah, he's been given a 3-year contract for a reason, though. Like I don't think if there's no
Kerry people don't do 3-year plans.
Well, they do in this circumstance because they've won 4 All-Ireland minor titles in a row. If you're not doing a 3-year plan when you've got 4 All-Ireland minor winning teams, then you're an idiot. So it was obviously the sensible thing to give him a 3-year plan.
Doesn't have to, like, people always talk about the 3-year plan as culminating with.
No, of course. If there's an All-Ireland in the first year, brilliant.
You take it, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's almost it from us for this morning. Thanks for all your brilliant comments. We do have a winner for our competition for those tickets for the basketball tomorrow night, and Tommy will be in touch with you when we're done here. You can check out all the best stuff too on offtheball.com. It's 9:10 on this Friday morning, and we have one piece of an interview that you're going to throw to, are you? Or am I going to do that?
I think you're going to do that.
I'm going to do all of that good stuff. And I'll do it as soon as I can find it. Here we go. Right. Thanks, Owen. It's been
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Mostly a pleasure. Aislinn Desmond popped into the studio last week. She was helping to launch the 2018 Comórtas Pell Football Festival, which is sponsored by Lidl. It's all Kerry football, really, this morning is the general tone of things. It's a Club Gaelic football tournament which takes place from the 16th to the 18th of February. It's on the Dingle Peninsula. A pretty amazing backdrop to it. You can get more details on poddyoshea.com. Aislinn sat down with our own Owen, and here she is on the start of the Ladies Football Leagues and facing their neighbours Cork first up.
Yeah, you can't beat the rivalry with Cork, but yeah, so we're back now training with the last week. We've new strength and conditioning coaching this year, and I suppose we'll just probably test out a couple of things during the league and to get to know players and put people in different positions and things, and I suppose we'll just see how we get on, because we're only just back training, so we'll be very fresh.
Is that the usual thing every year, that it's January you go back?
No, generally we'd go back sooner. We'd probably go back generally before Christmas is kind of when we normally go back, but this year we went back a bit later.
And is there some sort of science behind that?
I'm not actually sure why we went back later. Maybe because, I don't know, probably management decision, to be honest.
Because we had Fergus Connolly in here last week. He's actually working over in the University of Michigan at the moment, and he's worked with a number of different teams, and his first port of call with injuries and burnout is that there's just too much training. The problem isn't the matches when people are playing pre-season competitions and playing with the colleges and then playing with the counties and the clubs. Yeah. He reckons it's just overtraining. So it seems to me that science is moving in the direction that bringing county teams back around November, December is actually a waste of time, and what you're doing coming back in January might actually be the way forward.
We'll see in September.
You're probably happier out with that anyway.
Yeah. No, like to be fair, you're always kind of tipping away doing your own things anyway during the the off season, and it is nice to get a break, and like it's nice to just be able to relax during Christmas and like not have to worry about like a beep test or like a fitness test or something like that. So
as we've established, it's Cork up first, and the reason why I say you've got so much familiarity is for the obvious reasons, but also you're from Rathmore, so
it's literally on the border.
Literally on the border. I mean, when you chat to anybody from the men's teams down through the years, and you look at the opposite side of the border, they're like, God, those Kerry lads will be going on about it all the time that they've won Sam so many times. Do you find it kind of envy on the other way, or is it more? Is it something that drives you on?
Like, I think it'd be more admiration, to be honest. Like, I'd actually admire the hunger that Cork actually had for the last couple of years. Like, they've 10 All-Irelands. It's an outstanding achievement. There's girls my age that have 10, and like I've none, you know. So, like, to come back year on year, and I mean, like, they have a new trainer now, Aoife Fitzgerald, but prior to that, they had Eamon, and like, we had him for an All-Stars tour, and like he just instills such belief in you. So I can see why the girls had it, to be honest. But yeah, no, I definitely admire the players.
What is it about Eamon that he manages to instill that belief?
I think it's just personally, when I had him, it was just you like, he just literally, you thought you could take on anyone, and it was just like he always just like brought it back to basics. Do you know, it wasn't like these mad game plans with him, and like that's kind of, I suppose, how Cork kind of closed out games. They like had all these big like leaders and stuff, and they always stood up when they needed to be counted. From the outside looking in, it seems that gap between yourselves and Cork has closed a little bit. Yeah, definitely. Is it 3 of the last 5 Munster titles now, if you include last year? And I suppose like Cork didn't even get to the Munster final this year. And this year coming now, we have Tipperary, who were undefeated in the championship this year. So like there'll be real stiff competition this year now coming into championship between Waterford, Tipperary, Cork and ourselves. Because I'm sure when you look back at last year, that is the highlight, is winning Munster, obviously. Yeah. Certainly when I look back on Kerry's season last year, the one moment I remember is Hannah O'Donoghue's amazing goal against Armagh. And I think that was one of the moments of the season. And certainly when I looked at Kerry from that point, it's like, right, they've got the likes of Hannah in there. There's a young breed of players coming here, and they're going to give a really big challenge to the All-Ireland title. So what happened that day against Dublin? I think, to be honest, Dublin were just like way better than us. Like they seemed to, they were a lot more athletic. They were a lot more professional. They seemed to have a running game. They had a game plan, and I don't know, they just seemed to implement their game plan on top of us, and we just couldn't come to terms with it at all. Because when we talk about other teams and their professionalism, it can often manifest itself on the pitch, but we often don't know what's going on behind closed doors, except with this Dublin team, and we have the documentary. So do you feel that your suspicions about the higher levels of professionalism were kind of vindicated when you saw the documentary? Definitely, yeah. I mean, even like when they had like the analysis at like half time, and then when you heard like Mick Bohan speaking to them, telling them like, this is exactly your role, this is what you need to do, and like you carry the ball for 90% and you score for 10. Like it's great to get that critique, to know that like this is my strong point, so I can just do that and then I'll play well. And like then I suppose there's an overall goal, and like you know that you're feeding into it correctly, as opposed to just kind of doing your own thing, you know. So yeah, no, I definitely think that you could see the unity and the professionalism, and that everybody knew their job on the day, I suppose. Was there any parallels between that level of statistical influence on the Dublin team and what you do in Kerry? Do you have that level of detail at half time and at full time at all? Like I suppose we'd have it to a certain degree, but just after seeing the Dublin ladies programme, that like, no, I don't think that we would have had the same degree now, to be honest. Because it also, like, it kind of ties in with this point that it strikes me as strange that Dublin are the county to actually do the documentary, because I know Cork actually denied the opportunity to do the documentary. Yeah, they didn't want it or something inside in their change room. And are you surprised by that at all? I don't know. Like, as in, I wouldn't... I suppose every team is kind of different, and... like, I suppose if it's going to affect your performance, then you wouldn't want it there, do you know? But if you can get on and, I suppose, publicise the game, and like, it was fantastic for ladies football watching it, because everybody was talking about the Blue Sisters after, do you know, how good the documentary was and how well the girls came across and things, and... you know, it just, like, it was a fantastic show, to be honest.
if you had to pick one thing, one learning from the documentary or from the season, even just coming up against Dublin as a whole, and they're probably the benchmark at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What's your one learning from them at the moment?
I think that actually their unity and their bond, like, it was really evident throughout the documentary. And even like one of the girls was even speaking about that, like that Mick Bohan would have like a really high bill from like bringing all the girls, and that's lovely to know that like your manager like actually cares for you as a person. And you know, it's just small things like that, I suppose. And then they are like team bonding, and it just seemed like a real tight unit. And I suppose that just displayed on the pitch then, that like they would die for each other, you know.
Whenever we have somebody coming in for an interview, the first thing you do always is Google, just to see if there's anything in the news or anything like that. But one of the first Google results that comes up for you whenever you go back associates you with one footballer, and I'm sure you know who that is.
Is it Coruscant?
Absolutely, bang on the money there. And when you search it into images, then you get this image here from a couple of years ago, August 2015, I think, the famous day when Coruscant was finally kept quiet and you beat Mayo, an All-Ireland quarter-final. What happened on that day? How much planning and preparation did you have to put in a performance like that to actually stop her?
That was actually when Alan O'Neill was over us. Like, he was a fantastic manager as well, actually. And do you know, I suppose, like, when you think that, like, when I'm told I'm marking Cora, I love it. I'm like, I get adrenaline off it, and like, I'm like, okay, yeah, the best player in the country, like, leave me at her, kind of a thing, you know. So like that day now, in fairness, like, she's so difficult to mark. Like, she's such a talented player, and in fairness, I'd say there was a nice tug of the jersey there. But yeah, no, like, I suppose overall it's like I'm only one person, you know, like there's 14 other girls on the team like that, like, also helped on that, you know. I was only just man marking her, but all the other girls were probably cutting off the good ball coming into her as well, you know. So
is there more of a focus on a defensive plan like that in recent years, particularly when you look ahead to this year and with an eye on what happened to Dublin? Obviously, it's going to be the one thing that's in all of your minds at the moment, because it was the last time you planned to carry jersey was that poor result against Dublin. So
yeah.
I wonder, does that feed into potentially your mentality this year and setting up a defensive plan so a result like that doesn't happen again this year?
Yeah, you should hope not to leave in 5 goals again. You know. But yeah, I suppose I don't really know our plan for this year now. But like, I don't think that we'd ever be able to go defensive because our forwards are too good, you know. Like, I mean, if we let off the ball quick and fast, we've the best forwards in the country, like, there's no doubt. So I don't think that we'd ever be good at implementing the defensive game.
It's not to carry away anyway, that's what they always say. Just staying with Cora for a second, kind of a wider point with that, just about her move down to Australia. I know it's only a temporary thing, but in terms of how that's often viewed, and you look at young lads going down to Australia, and obviously in Kerry you had the likes of Tomás O'Shea during the David Clifford saga saying this is bad, this shouldn't be happening. For me, I see that as like a huge step towards elitism, and maybe some people think elitism is going way too far at the moment. But you look at the record attendance in the ladies' final in Croke Park, and you look at the steps going towards reaching that level of elitism that the men's teams get. Surely having that experience of a professional lifestyle down in Australia, even if it is just for one player, is a benefit. There can't be anything wrong with that, and she's going to be back for the championship anyway.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that it's fantastic for her, and fair play to her for taking the opportunity, because most people wouldn't, because I suppose it's the fear of the unknown, you know. And like, she'll be back for championship. She can be a professional athlete for 4 months, which is brilliant. Like, you know, she'll come back stronger than ever. She'll come back fitter than ever. So yeah, for Mayo, they'll be serious contenders this year now. Definitely, yeah. And like, I think it's a great opportunity for ladies football to get, like, to be a professional athlete.
Absolutely, and it's certainly reaching a level where you can be considered elite at this point. You've seen it in the documentary, we're seeing it with the likes of Cora being taken down there. Do you feel that that's the case in Kerry? I know there's a new Centre of Excellence in Kearns. Have you got access to that?
We haven't been there yet now, no, but I think they were supposed to be there at some stage of the year, alright, yeah.
That's probably the next step then, isn't it? It's like getting a centre of excellence.
Exactly, yeah.
I presume there's a high performance plan, and then as you mentioned, there isn't as much of an influence in statistics, but I'm sure that's involved in the team in the background.
Absolutely, yeah. Hope so anyway, you know. I mean, we've seen a documentary on it and it looks unbelievable out there. The pitches look fantastic and stuff, and I think some of the men are out there, the minors are out there at the moment, so hopefully we'll get to go out there now at some stage of the year.
Absolutely, it'll be the first step on finally getting your hands on that All-Ireland, which I'm sure is something you've dreamed of for ages, because I know you're a little bit too young to properly remember that great Kerry team. Was it 9 in a row from 1981 onwards?
The Mary Jo Carnes, Noah Hallis season then. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I'm sure that there's folklore there around that, so regardless of the fact that you don't remember it, I presume you don't remember it anyway, or any of those players around it. Yeah, definitely too young. Like, what is that like when you're growing up? Is it always wanting to be a Kerry player and emulating the likes of the Mary Joes and not winning 9 All-Irelands in a row, but certainly getting your hands on an All-Ireland medal? Was that ever in your consciousness at all when you were a young footballer?
Not really, I suppose. For me, it was just more, my father used to just like train the local team, so he used to like bring me along. My sister was the main footballer of the house, and he used just kind of bring me along, I suppose, just to fill the time, I'd say, for me. And then then I started to enjoy it more, and then I took a break from it from minors to, I'd say I was when back at maybe 20, and then like I haven't looked back since. I love playing football, and like I think the opportunity it gives you, and like you make friends for life, and I mean it's great for your like for your like physical and mental mind, I suppose. You know, it's great to get exercise in, and like the girls are like best friends and we're like family, you know, so like you don't get that in with any other kind of sport, I suppose. Out
of interest, who was your role model as a young footballer?
Seamus Moynihan.
Right, okay. Even though you're from Athmore, you're happy out picking a Glenflesk man as a role model.
Seamus Moynihan was.
What was it about Seamus that made him your role model?
Like, he was such a ruthless player, and like, I mean, he was just so admirable to watch, and like I suppose I always wanted to play like for Kerry, and he was playing, was it centre back or full back? Can't remember now.
Both, bit of both.
Yeah. And like he was just, he was majestic to watch, to be honest. I thought he was fantastic. Like, he was always like ruthless in the tackles, and like he always he was always so vocal as well. So yeah, no, he was always my role model, like growing up.
And hopefully the full set is completely emulated this year. You're a top full back. Hopefully the All-Ireland medal will follow this year. Aislinn Desmond, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks so much. Thanks.